this is to you, Greg. If I ask you to state one thing you feel that we have lost in our Hebraic roots in living the godly life, what would that be? Prayer, the family, the Sabbath? Would you like to comment on that?
I guess I would say Sabbath for me personally. And that really came out probably just to tell a brief personal story here in terms of my own journey. I think there's been a reincorporation in the evangelical world around the contemplative stream necessarily in terms of how we live at our pace of life. I had my first sabbatical in the summer of 1993 when I was pastoring a church in Northern California. And I went away for 2 months. The church had given me this gift to separate from ministry for that period of time. Part of that was a challenge to go off for a 3-day silent retreat, and which actually scared me to death. You know, like, okay, I know what I'm going to do for the first hour on this retreat. What do I do for the next 71 hours? You know, at a silent retreat where you're just bringing your Bible, your hymn book, maybe a journal, and you have no interaction with any other human being, and certainly no television set. So I went away with a question, and that question was, Lord, what's your vision for the church for the next period of time? As the pastor of the church, I thought, well, that's probably an important question. I probably should know where the church should be going if I'm going to try to lead it there. But in the time of silence, the Lord sort of said to me, Greg, that's the wrong question. The question is not what is my vision for you, but what is your vision of me? And I thought, oh, that's a really different question. Very different question. Well, that led to a kind of a whole series of reflections when that question changed. And part of it was, how am I living my life in a way that I keep that relationship and vision alive before God? And I realized I was violating the Sabbath in my life. I would be working too much, encroaching on my Sabbath day, and I needed to return to that rhythm. And so I began to put in my calendar Sabbath, not day off, but Sabbath. Started putting messages on my email that said, out of office, this is my Sabbath day. I disconnect electronically on this day. If you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me tomorrow, or I'll reply tomorrow, but not today. Just to kind of move at a pace where I was going to be enjoying my relationship with God. And that really became the big key question for me was, is the life I'm living communicating a joy in my relationship with the Lord? And if it isn't, what's the purpose? If it's just about putting on programs and doing the church stuff and keeping things moving and leadership, if I'm not having emanating from me that sense that I love God and I am somewhat infectious about that, then what's the point? And the Sabbath keeping was a big ingredient in that whole process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Speaking of technology, and why wouldn't a challenge be for all of us is one day a week to turn our phones off or not to check email or not look at the internet, so that one day a week we are not eye slaves. And okay, or enslaved to technology. And I think that would we could use technology, it could be beneficial to us, but we could say we are not being mastered by this. Okay, we are not being enslaved by technology. And I think for many people, a Sabbath day, whether you do it on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Monday, whatever, it would be a very good practice for all of us.
David, do Christians in Jerusalem keep the Sabbath?
We do keep the Sabbath in the sense that everything closes and shuts down. I mean, we don't. You just kind of have to do it. But look, it becomes something really, really beautiful, and I think people really enjoy it, and even Jewish people. I don't know any Jews, and I know very, very many Orthodox or religious Jews who think of it as some kind of a burden or something onerous. Almost everybody I know loves it, and they look forward to it, and they think it's, something that's very, very special. And I agree with them. So,
Thank you. Yes, Corey.
I think the inability to keep a Sabbath has affected everything else in our Christian life. Our relationship with God, we don't know how to rest in His presence and worship Him. Our family relationships, we don't know how to spend time with our families anymore. So the Sabbath, neglecting the Sabbath affects everything else in our Christian life.
Right. Yes.
I'll just make a point, because God rested on the seventh day, but did He return to work on the eighth day? The fact is that He has entered into rest, which is one reason I think why Jesus somehow had an uncanny way of getting into trouble, doing all His miracles on the Sabbath day. And when He gives this invitation to come and rest, Matthew 11:28, He follows it up by saying, "Take my yoke." See, you don't take your yoke in order to rest, in order to work. So my understanding is that perfect work and perfect rest are inseparable. You work as you rest, and you rest as you work. And then He gives a key to that in Matthew 11:29. "I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." What makes your work draining is your selfish agenda that you put into your drivenness. Whereas when God, by His grace and through the cross, takes away that drivenness, your work will be part of your Sabbath observation. So I'm doing a study of Sabbath from Genesis 1 and 2. John 5 is particularly very provocative. After healing that paralytic, He says, "My Father is working, so I work." My goodness, it's adding insult to injury. And then in Hebrews 4, there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. When you do a study of all this, I'm not taking anything away from what Greg did. We all have to do that. But remember that in the midst of a busy day, we need to see that the real understanding of Sabbath is a restfulness in work, which is, Malaysia is guilty of creating so many resorts that Singaporeans come here for rest, and when they go back, they need a break from the rest, because the rest itself has been so taxing. So I think you Malaysians, you better do a redo of this whole Sabbath business. Let me tell you something half humorous about theology from Indian government. We used to work 6 days a week before Rajiv Gandhi became our prime minister. Now, he made the working week 5 days. And then we said to our colleagues, now we'll be more efficient, because what we were not doing for 6 days, we will not be doing only for 5 days.
Yes,
I think he has to mention one thing we lost in our time is probably rest. I also think in terms of that line. I see the biblical pattern even in Genesis chapter 1. We are called to rest before we work, because the day starts in the evening, then in the morning. There was evening, there was morning, and the first day, second day, third day. And then therefore we need to rest first, rest enough, then we work. We don't work until we are so tired, and then we try to find time to sleep. And then Genesis chapter 2, we find that even Adam, he rested. After he rested well enough, then he had time to build his marriage, because he got up. God has brought his wife to him. I think it's important to find rest. I see this biblical pattern. We don't mention his principle.
Thank you very much.